You guys have the worst seats. I'm just being honest. I mean, we get to be a quote.
No.
We get to be So you got kind of, these are good? It's kind of like, this is the 4%. Did you want it? How do you do? 4%. Great to be here tonight, guys. We have an hour to talk about things. Hey. My favorite kind of talks are when we have to talk to people your age, because I think
like viewers to define limits and push boundaries. So, how does this saying apply to you, as well as to everybody else out there?
I think it's one of those things that like you can speak platitudes, like the quotes that you see all those people like put on Instagram with like cool fonts, and they say things like "Do what you can, bro." Or there's like a kitten hanging off of a branch and it says like "Follow your dreams." But for me, a movie like "Do What You Can," which is essentially about like all the people who told me no in life, is a movie I could have only made when I was older and had realized a lot of the ambitions that I set out to do. And that's what that movie was meant to be, is like a manifesto from someone who's lived it to people who are chasing it. And that's why that video is pinned on my channel, because it means a lot to me. Like, that's a story I've always wanted to tell, but it's a story you have to earn. You can't just buy the kitten poster and stick it on your wall and say, that's you have to actually live it. And that's what that movie represents. I turned it off. That's what that movie represents. By the way, the movie opens by saying, to my 7th grade high school principal. The video, the shot, that's actually my 7th grade high school principal. And I went on Facebook and I was making that video. I was like, does anybody have a 7th grade yearbook? And someone was like, yes. I had to call a girl I haven't seen since 7th grade and coach her as to how to film the scene in her cell phone and then send it to me. And that motherfucker is still alive. And pardon my language, but this guy, I'm an adult now. I have a kid who's in high school. If there's one thing I know, is this guy, I was 13, and he told me, looking in the eye, he's like, when you grow up, he said, when you're my age, you're either gonna be dead, or you're gonna be in jail. And like, I was 13 then. If there's one thing I know as an adult, you never say that to a kid, ever. You would never, like, what kind of a person would say that to a kid? So now his legacy is my video.
So with, obviously with Beam and with your videos and everything that you do, how does your storytelling style push the boundaries of journalism?
Well, I mean, I think the definition of journalism is something that changes. I know my definition of journalism, my definition of news is something very narrow, which is sort of capturing something and then sharing it objectively. I don't do that. I only know how to share it from my perspective. So that's why I always sort of refrain. Even when I was working for the New York Times, my videos were called op docs and opinion documentaries because they were always told from my opinion. I'm not very good at sharing things objectively. I'm only good at sharing things as I know them, which is why I draw from my own life. What was your question?
How does your storytelling style push the boundaries of journalism?
But the sort of the golden rule for me, and what I attribute sort of the growth of the vlog, I don't think people were that interested in me, Casey the person. What I always tried to do was find stories that were universal, that were applicable. Like, you may not have all been hit by a cop and then had to crash your bike into a cop car to sort of vindicate yourself against paying a $50 ticket. But at one point in time in your life, you've been frustrated because there's been an authority that you don't know how to push back against. Like, I tried to return my cable box and they wouldn't take it back and they charged me for it. I was like, I tried to take it back and there's like nothing you can do about it, and I had to pay $300. I felt like a bully. And I think that like that emotion, like we always wish we could just make a video that says ha ha and then 20 million people watch it and we win. So I always try to draw from life at universal ideas, and me, I just happen to be the example. I share what it's like to be in a relationship with Candace, but really it's just one person in a relationship with someone else. They're universal ideas. And so again, I shy from the word journalism, but when I share things, I think they're things that we can all relate to in one way or another. That's the ambition anyway.
No, absolutely. And we're going to end the moderated Q&A before we go into that one guy who raised his hand. Kind of a funny question. So if you were in the grocery store, what aisle would you be? And why would you be that aisle?
Whoa. Okay. All right. I mean, the minute you said the word grocery store, it's straight to Pop-Tarts. But I don't know how that's relevant here. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know that I can answer that literally, but I can tell you that a grocery store story, which is, I moved to New York City June. Did I say something funny? I moved to New York City in June of 2001, and then September 11th, 2001, 3 months after I moved to the city, certainly long before I found my footing, terrorists blew up my apartment, and I lost everything I had. And a month later, I had a place to stay because of house sitting for this woman. She would let me stay in her house for free as long as I fed her cats while she was out of town. And that point in my life was like the hardest time in my entire life. I remember I would always set aside $50. That's how much it cost for a train ride to go back to Connecticut so I could spend my 3 days a week with Owen, my baby, who was 2 at the time. And that was one time in my life where I didn't have the $50. So when you say grocery stores, I literally remember going into the grocery store for a stay day, spelled with a G, at the end of the street, and knowing exactly how much money was in my pocket, all in change, and figuring out the maximum amount of food I could buy. Like a bag of rice will feed you so much longer than buying a sandwich, and figuring that out. And that was the lowest time. And by the way, this was after I ate every speck of food this woman had in her house. I remember I found a frozen jar of pasta sauce in the freezer. I was like, yes. And that was the real struggle. By the way, those cats, there were 3 of them. I watched them for a month. They lost a lot of weight. Because if the cat was meeting or me, well, I took precedent. When I first started, each cat got 2 cans of food a day, 6 cans a day. When she came back, those cats were splitting their 2 cans a day. So that was the toughest time. That was the time I remember, it probably happened once, probably happened twice. I remember being hungry, not being able to afford food. Not to go down this rabbit hole any further, but we just moved into our stupid, fancy, really obnoxiously, annoyingly fancy new apartment that I just bought us because I'm rich now. And while we're unpacking all of our bags, the movers came in with a plastic bag that was covered in duct tape. And inside of that bag were coffee tins filled up with change. And they were from way back in the day, because what I would do is, whenever I'd spend money, I would never spend the coins in my pocket. They would go into the jar. And then when I ran out of money, which would happen circumstantially, I would cash in the change to make sure I had enough to eat. And the movers found my change, my last lifeline, which were jars of change from 2001. I don't know what to do with them, but they have so much meaning. I don't know. Candace was what do we do with these? Can we just give them to the babysitter? And I was this is my life in that jar. Does that guy get that?